Now, claims that private citizens have been interfering in politics, the affairs of state and management of South Africa's economy may also weigh on business confidence. A new batch of so-called Gupta emails have been revealed, and Sunday reports also indicate that corporate heads of some of South Africa's leading banks have been under surveillance by the Gupta family. The politically connected business family from India is reported to have received emails showing the movement and flight details of banking sector leaders. Rothschild's board member Trevor Manuels, Barclays' Africa's Maria Ramos, First Rand Group Chair Laurie Dippenaar, and bank founder GT Ferreira among those whose details are contained in the emails. Stephen Kossoff of Investec also named as one of the banking leaders monitored. It's also alleged that the EFF's Julius Malema was under surveillance. The emails seem to have come from employees of the Department of Home Affairs, one of whom has high-level security clearance from the State Security Agency. The EFF says it will report the matter to the new Inspector General for Intelligence, Isaac Dintwe. His office confirmed to the SABC today that it had not yet received any complaint. All right, let's discuss this further. We're joined by Alison Tilley from the Right to Know campaign. She's also the head of advocacy at the Open Democracy Advice Centre. Let's see if she's ready for us from... Okay, she's not ready for us, but we will be coming back to Alison Tilley from the Right to Know campaign. The Home Affairs Portfolio Committee, meanwhile, is ready to resume its investigation into the naturalization of the Gupta family in South Africa tomorrow. This after the leaked Gupta emails showed that former Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba seemed to intervene in the naturalization of the Guptas. By this afternoon, the committee could not confirm whether the parties it had summoned would indeed appear. Well, the leaked emails showed that the Gupta family had initially been denied early naturalization by the Home Affairs Department. Gigaba used his ministerial powers to overturn that decision. He has, however, denied any wrongdoing on his part, saying he was acting within his powers. Gigaba also admitted that he had failed to inform Parliament on his decision as required by law. The committee wants Gigaba, current Home Affairs Minister Hlengiwe Mkhize, and Director General Mkhweseli Apleni to appear before the committee. Its deliberations will determine whether it will launch a formal inquiry into the naturalization of Gupta family members. All right, let's go back to the spying of banking leaders. To discuss further, we're joined by Alison Tilley from our Sea Point studio. She's from the Right to Know campaign, also the head of advocacy at the Open Democracy Advice Centre. Thank you for joining us, Alison. How aghast should we be that citizens who are not under criminal investigation were being surveyed and perhaps even by state organs?
Well, I think it's something that we should be very concerned about. The idea that ordinary people are under surveillance is concerning. There are very clear legal rules about how people should be put under surveillance and under what circumstances. Those rules are in the process of being tightened up, and that's certainly something that would be welcome. But I think this is just another confirmation of the fact that the rules are not, in fact, being adhered to even in their current state.
Okay, so can you outline what the rules are? Let's pretend that no state agency is involved. You can go and get a private investigator to spy on someone. What is their protection? What does the law say right now about this sort of spying?
Well, there's various different rules depending on what kind of information you're looking at. One of the major pieces of legislation that regulates the interception of communications is an act which is called exactly that. And in that legislation, you have to go to what is known as the RICA judge, RICA being short for the name of the act, and you then have to get a special warrant for real-time listening in on conversations, for example. However, what we also know is that every day in magistrates' courts, police and prosecutors will approach magistrates for warrants in terms of Section 205 of the Criminal Procedures Act, around which there are much less stringent criteria. So we know that different rules are used in different times and in different places, and that's one of the things that the law reform process has to look at to make sure that there aren't these loopholes which people can get around. Unfortunately, the problem of people ignoring the law altogether is another question, and something which then has to be dealt with. So, for example, in the case of surveillance, you'd have to look to the Inspector General for Intelligence as a potential provider of a remedy.
Can you comment on this specific, these specific claims that there was an Excel spreadsheet with dates and times of flights that people were taking? How dubious does that sound to you, and where could it come from? Laurie Dippenaar, I think, saying possibly Home Affairs. They're saying no, look at the travel agents, and then also some signs that it could be state agents. What's your feel based on what you've seen or read?
Well, I think it would be difficult for me to comment on these specific circumstances. What I can say is that one of the things we know about information in this age is that information is very slippery. All sorts of people have information, and sometimes information that they shouldn't necessarily have access to. That's one of the reasons that we're trying to introduce or bring into operation the Protection of Personal Information Act, so that you make sure that only the right people have the right information, and they only keep it for the right length of time, and they don't use it improperly. Now, without that protection in place, I'm afraid it really can be a situation where, whether it's people writing notes in a notebook or a travel agent, downloading information and putting it into a spreadsheet, it's very difficult to know where information comes from.
All right, so right now we're not at all sure. It seems like a bit of a minefield. You mentioned the Interception of Communications. There's also the Protection of Personal Information Act, POPI. Last year, I think you were commenting on the Information Regulator. Does that person fit in here at all?
Well, the Information Regulator is exactly the agency that is supposed to deal with issues around the protection of personal information. That regulator has just had a meeting with civil society in Cape Town in this last week and has explained that their office is not yet operational and that they only expect for it to be up and running next year. That regulator is headed by Pansy Tlakula. And they are certainly already, although not taking complaints, looking at some of the issues around personal information that have come up in the SASA issues around those deductions being made from SASA account holders, which we think may be an abuse of personal information as well. So I'm afraid these issues are coming up all around us. There's just no getting away from them.
And I guess we have to learn as well as we go along. The EFF, in the meantime, taking the case to the Inspector General for Intelligence. Now, that's on the possibility that state personnel were involved. Is that the right person and a powerful person in South Africa?
I think that's absolutely the right person. Whether it's a powerful office is a different question. We've got a new Inspector General in place. And certainly the Office of the Inspector General has been open to discussing issues with civil society and has been talking to people about complaints they've laid. So that's a very good sign. But I think one of the things that we tend to do is, if one structure is functional, then we all rush to that structure to see, if we can't get a remedy there. That's really not how this is supposed to work. We need to have the RICA amendments in place, POPI come into force, the Information Regulator operational, the Inspector General for Intelligence working, and the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence in Parliament doing their job. So there's a number of different role players who need to be making sure that if there has been an abuse of surveillance powers, that doesn't happen, and that the people who are responsible are held to account.
Are you basically saying, Alison, that what this is exposing perhaps is that we need tighter laws and in South Africa we need better monitoring, implementation of those laws, etc.?
I think we have to see it as an ecosystem. I don't think it's looking for one law or one agency who can remedy the problem. The explosion of information that is out there has been difficult for many agencies to manage, including, the ones in America who have endless resources, or so it seems. We really have to think quite carefully as a country that doesn't have endless resources as to what we can do in order to make sure that we don't have these kinds of breaches of your right to privacy, which is basically what we're talking about at the end of the day. Surveillance is a breach of your right to privacy and should only happen where you can really justify it for ends that we would all agree on. And I think that's what we're really looking at here, is how do you defend the right to privacy in such a way that you make sure that you look after people's safety and make sure that people's rights are respected and protected.
Yeah, and we haven't even got to the woman whose number was given out recently, but we have to end it there. Thank you so much for that insight.